Hello YouTube, Helen the Russian here. Different topic for this video, nothing to do with rideshare or eBay. It's about Las Vegas police. I'm not gonna keep anyone in suspense. I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but I love Las Vegas police. I think our police is genuinely really great. And I think Joe is a good sheriff, Joe Lombardo. Obviously, he's a politician, and politics are complicated, and I'm sure he's done a fair few things that gray area. But having said all that, I do believe overall Joe is a really good sheriff, and he's doing right by our city. I've mentioned before in one of my previous videos that many years ago Las Vegas police came through for me when it really mattered, and I won't forget it. I'm one of these people who were raised to be grateful, but I'll tell that story now to give a better idea of why I feel like that about our police, and then recent events support my opinion as well. But anyhow, back then, I was very young, my early 20s, married to a guy a fair bit older than myself, nearly, I think, 16 years he was. I did not realize until we were married that he was an alcoholic. And I don't mean heavy drinker, I mean alcoholic as a disease, which is why I didn't realize it before, because there was no opportunity for me to discover that. And he basically hid vodka bottles in toilet tank and various other places so he can drink them in secret, when he thought I wasn't watching. And he been doing it for years and years, to a point that he was a functional alcoholic, which is another reason I couldn't figure it out straight away. He was functioning fine. He was not getting sloppy drunk after he drank half a bottle of vodka. He was still all right, like on the surface. Obviously, he really wasn't. But anyhow, this guy, his name was Bob. He was emotionally and mentally abusive, which again, at the time I was very young, I did not recognize for what it was. I thought he was jealous because he really loves me, he's possessive, and it had to do with his country of origin. He was originally from Iran, but now mind, he moved to US when he was 16, and by the time I met him he was early 40s. So for all intents and purposes, he was American. If you saw him on the street or talked to him, you would never guess where he was from. I mean, he had American accent, he looked like an average American, he wasn't Muslim, well, he wasn't religious, period, but he was never Muslim, so nothing, except for his last name. When you knew his last name, you knew he's originally from someplace maybe, but again, there are plenty of second and third generation Americans with foreign last names. Anywho, and this mental and emotional abuse gotten extremely bad and very much worse pretty much immediately after the wedding. Once again, he wasn't showing that big of a signs before we were married, and literally just right after the wedding, that's when things started getting really bad, and which is why marriage did not last. I mean, it didn't even last a year. But on this particular occasion, back to my story, it was his day off, it was my day off. I had an appointment with the hairstylist. Back then I had a really long hair down to my waist, and I used to color it, and obviously I needed a trim every time I went. And as ladies know, this is something you do regularly, so you go every 6 to 8 weeks for that. And so, meaning that wasn't the first time I had a hair appointment. I left in the morning, everything seemed to be fine. I was gone for just over 3 hours because I had to drive to the hairstylist. Long hair with curl and cut takes that long to process and cut and wash and dry. So I get back home. As soon as I stepped through the door, I could tell Bob spent pretty much all of that time drinking, and he drank vodka straight all by himself. He didn't need company. He was actually sloshed, which means he killed more than entire bottle for him to get that sloshed. He wasn't sloppy, but he was definitely, you could tell that the person was drunk. Immediately he became quite verbally aggressive, saying things, where have you been, you lying. And I said, look, you can see I've done my hair. And I was trying to kind of diffuse the situation, but he was having none of it. He was the thing that was pattern of his abuse. He constantly tried to shift the dynamic of power and put me on the offensive and accused me of all manner of things that he knew I wasn't doing or I didn't do. So he was saying, oh, you went someplace, you looked at other men, why didn't you take me with you? Which he never wanted to go with me. Like, why would a man sit in a hair salon watching his wife getting the haircut? And he never wanted to go. It wasn't about him wanting to go. I said, well, you should have said you wanted to go. I wouldn't think you'll enjoy any of it. He goes, well, that's beside the point. And anyhow, it became an argument, quite serious argument. And Bob, because he was definitely drunk, that was the first time he got physical. He went after me, and it was a 2-story house back then in which we lived here in Las Vegas. I ran upstairs where the master bedroom was. Bob had guns. He liked to collect guns. Overall, I think he had 8 guns between handguns and shotguns, and one of the handguns, 9mm Beretta, he kept in the nightstand. So he grabbed me by the hair in the bedroom, and I was trying to get away from him. So he threw me on the bed, and he grabbed the gun, which I couldn't see because I was face down. And thankfully he wasn't that drunk as to shoot the gun, but he hit me right on the top here with the butt of the gun, and he got my spine. To this day, I don't know how he didn't crack my spine, because it hurt. It really did hurt. And almost immediately it welled up, and I was really sore. It was very painful, but he didn't. I was able to move, so I got away from him, and I ran downstairs, and he was still going after me, screaming and yelling, and I was yelling back, saying, leave me alone, and no argument. You know how arguments are between people. Well, that's when Bob, like I said, that there was a lot more drunk than normal for him. He grabbed a fireplace poker. We were downstairs in the living room, and I remember it like it was yesterday, despite the fact that was nearly 20 years, over 20 years. He grabbed the fireplace poker, and he went after me. Now remember, I was dead sober, he was drunk, and also I've always been in a really good physical shape because I was an athlete when I was young, and I maintained that shape. So I went like this and knocked the fireplace poker out of his hand, and he didn't expect that from me, so he let go, and I grabbed him by the ears, and I brought his face down on my knee, and I broke his nose. He immediately, see, that's the thing with cowards though, the minute he saw the minute he saw all that blood, you know how nose is, you break the nose, the blood's just gushing out. The minute he saw all that blood, he lost all his aggressiveness, so to speak, and he was just sitting there going, you bitch, you broke my nose. And he just looked at it, and he started saying, I'm gonna call the police. I go, well, by all means, do that. So he did. So this is where the story really begins. So he himself called the police, saying that I assaulted him and broke his nose. Remember, whenever something takes place and police is not there, they do not know what happened before they arrive. They have to go on the facts that they have in their possession. So as far as they knew, the dispatch, when they dispatched the car, said the man is calling from this residential house. He says he's been assaulted, he's bleeding, his nose is broken. In the meantime, and they responded pretty quickly. I'd say they were there inside 10 minutes, maybe 7 minutes it took them. So Bob, in order to piss me off, because I'm a really tidy person, I like everything neat, clean, and tidy, he stood, I kid you not, he stood by the front door, which, you know, there was a white wall around that door, and he was taking his blood and spreading it on my white walls. He was just smearing it all over the walls. I was dressed in a normal street clothes because, like I said, I just came back from the hairdresser. He was wearing the trainer pants and a bathrobe over and nothing else. So police had arrived. You know, we opened the door for them, and that's when I give a lot of credit to police, and to them have enough experience and training to figure out the situation for what it really is and not for what it appears to be on the surface. So that's a normal procedure. They separate. So they separated us, and one officer questioned me and another one questioned Bob. So I told the officer exactly what happened. I showed him the lump on my back. Once again, remember, I was dead sober, and I was speaking coherently, clearly, and Bob was in there, doing whatever he was doing, talking about this and that. And then the officer asked me to take him to the bedroom and show him where the gun was. I did. And then they went and police talk amongst themselves, and they immediately told Bob to stand by the cruiser and put his hands behind his back. And Bob was, I remember it because I stepped out of the door, and he was going, my nose. And the officer said, you live. And they handcuffed him, and they put him in the cruiser, and they arrested him. In the meantime, the other officer came back, and he said, look, we would want to confiscate all the guns. I said, by all means, please do it now. I never wanted them in the house. They're not mine. I have no interest in the guns. So they took the guns. They wrote me a receipt. They clearly itemized everything, wrote me a receipt. And then the officer sat down with me. He explained to me that there is, I don't know if it still is in Vegas, but back then he said, look, I'm going to give you the number. It's an 800 number. You can file emergency restraining order right now over the phone. Right now. And then in 3 days' time, you would have to go actually to court, physically to court, to get a permanent restraining order. And he talked to me calmly, and he was middle-aged. I'm going to say mid-30s, late 30s. I was a bit younger, obviously, but like about 10 years younger. He said, look, a lot of women, he says, I see what's happening here. A lot of women at a later date, they, for whatever reasons, they go and they take back, because they ask me if I want to press charges, and I said yes. They go, we will definitely do this, but a lot of women later on come back and retract the charges, take them back and whatnot. He said, obviously you will do what you find necessary, but I recommend that you stick with this. You don't need this. And that was the first person in this entire saga with Bob who actually sat down and made me see things for what they really, really were. And he took his time. Las Vegas police are actually really busy. And with that, he made sure that I had his card. He made sure I have the number. He gave me a receipt for the guns that they confiscated, and then they left it. They made sure, they asked me if I was all right. They asked me if I want social services called for me, and I said, no, I'm all right. And then they left. And ultimately, I can tell you that I divorced Bob. Obviously, I was not going to stick out in that marriage. I mean, no one ever laid a hand on me. My daddy would never. My dad was lovely. But that's Las Vegas police. And if you think about it, you'll understand how important that was. Because when they arrived, remember, they weren't there through the whole entire ordeal. What they could see, and from what they have, the information was that the man called, said he was assaulted. They turn up and he's bleeding and nose appears to be broken. And that's all. They could have arrested me. They could have done whatever, but they didn't. They took their time. They had enough experience to understand what really went on, and they did all the right things. And they provided the support to me that I genuinely needed at that time. That he didn't have to sit there for nearly 20 minutes. He sat with me and talked with me. That he didn't need to do that. They already done their job. So, like I said, I will never forget it. I'm forever grateful. But me aside, let's forget about me. Every day, remember, no matter how annoyed you could be with the police because, they wrote you a traffic ticket or whatnot, remember, these are the people who stand between you and whatever crazy is out there. Every single day. Every time they make a routine traffic stop, they could be shot at. I'll give you an example. I'm sure many of you saw it last year. There was a case when their cell phones were stolen from this realtor's car, and the thief didn't realize that the realtor had it. They were iPhones. The realtor had that tracker on them that you can switch on from another device. So the realtor tracked the phones to, it was the area, industrial area right around Russell, Polaris, somewhere in there. And so he tracked it down, drove there. He saw the truck. He saw the guy, like from a distance. He saw the guy sleeping in the truck, as a matter of fact. And it was clear on the app that the phones are in the truck. So he did the right thing, of course. He called the police. Well, think about it. And he explained to police, what was going on. So broad daylight. They arrived basically on the call. The guy saying, look, that dude stole my phones. Here's the proof. The tracker shows they're in the car. He's asleep. So the officers went and knocked on the window. And at first, there was just a conversation. Well, before you knew it, the guy grabbed the gun and started shooting. And he heard that officer. Thankfully, he didn't kill him, but the officer was shot. Think about it. That minor thing, like overall, yeah, of course it's horrible when someone steals something from you, but overall, like over an iPhone, the officer almost lost his life because the dude was just crazy. That's what I mean about them standing between us and the crazy every day. I don't have to tell you about 1 October, but there is something I did want to bring up. Press pushed really hard for the body cam footage to be released to the public. Joe didn't want to do it simply because he explained, he said, look, you're not going to see anything in there that, you didn't see in real life. There is no conspiracy, nothing was happening out of the extraordinary, no one was hiding anything, and it will cost a lot of money and manpower because he had to put several men, take them from other jobs like protecting us, and put them there together so they can put together all this footage from all those body cams. Well, he did it because press went to court and got a court order, so it happened. He released, now the footage is released. I know Channel 13 because that's what I watch. I have to say, I think they do feel bad because they look through the entire thing. You can see it on their website. No, they didn't find the conspiracy. What they did find is police quite literally throwing themselves out there, trying to A, protect the public, and B, as quickly as possible apprehend the shooter. And there was one particular example, and of course it's on body cam footage, so you can see it, firsthand, straight from the horse's mouth. This cruiser arrived because all the police, the minute it started and the first police put out the call, all the police rushed into the area. They weren't running away. They all rushed in there. So this cruiser arrived, and the cruiser, of course, has 2 police officers in it. And there was a woman who was shot in the head, still alive. Her husband was dragging her, and he yelled for help. So immediately, and you can see it on the camera, because obviously both officers had the body cam, so when they're facing each other, it shows what each other is doing and what they look like. They didn't even stop for 2 seconds to put the gloves on. In this day and age, you know why they do it, right? Because of HIV and other diseases with bloodborne and whatnot. They didn't even think for a minute about themselves. They grabbed the woman, they put her in a cruiser with her husband, and they rushed to UMC because, of course, if you're local, the best trauma center is at UMC. The best cardiac center is St. Rose, but trauma center UMC, they radioed ahead, so UMC is ready, and they, of course, because they police, they know how to word it, so they understand it's a head wound, it's a gunshot wound. And then in the hospital, there is still body footage. You can see the cop was literally covered. He was covered in that blood, and he did not care about himself, about his health and well-being. He just wanted to help. The woman is alive. She's alive today, and she'll be okay. She actually will be okay, meaning she's walking, she's talking, she's fine. And of course, she's very grateful, but it's just one example of what police did to protect us. I don't know how people forget this. A lot of people, Las Vegas police gets a lot of flack for various different things, but people forget. Las Vegas, you know how it is. It's a very busy place with lots of people everywhere. They don't have the luxury of taking their sweet time and giving a perpetrator warning, 5, 6, 7, 10 times. They need to act quickly to stop whatever is going on to prevent other people from getting hurt. Another example would be the gentleman who died in a chokehold. Now, we all seen that video, those of you who looked, and you can pull it up now. Now, mind, it's genuinely tragic. I value human life. It is horrible, and it didn't have to happen. But remember, and the friends of the guy admit, he took drugs. Some of them are known, and he clearly couldn't handle those drugs, and he literally went crazy. You can see it on camera. He was at the Venetian Valet area. Big guy, he was a big guy, just flaring and going crazy. And police told him to stop, to calm down. He didn't. They tasered him, and he kept going. And then they put him in a chokehold. Unfortunately, he died. And I'm gonna say honestly, it's speculation on my part. I don't know, but possibly all the drugs that were in the system had to do with that, because police is trained. They don't mean to kill when they chokehold. They just want to subdue the person. But it had to do with the drugs, I'm gonna say. A lot of people were absolutely outraged. Well, here is the thing. You have to be objective. Try and stay objective. Imagine it's you standing there at the Venetian Valet. You went there to have dinner, or you're a visitor here, you're just standing waiting for your car. Now this big guy, no, he's not aiming to kill you, but he's running, going crazy. I mean, he was crazy. He was jumping over things. And so he knocks you down, and you go and hit your face over the pillar, fence, car, whatever. And now not only you bruised, or possibly your nose is broken, your tooth is chipped, or you're missing a tooth or two. Who's going to pay for this? Not the guy. No. Are you going to be happy? You're going to be missing work. You're going to be facing huge medical bills. Who's going to pay? And ultimately, you're probably going to sue Venetian or even Las Vegas Police Department, saying they failed to protect me. They failed to prevent it. Well, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to do their job. They're trying to protect the public. They're trying to make sure when these situations occur, they taken care of immediately. They need to subdue the person, and then they need to take their time to figure out what went on. And oftentimes, like with that ball player and the Drai's Club, when people thought there was a gunshot, he ran, they grabbed him, they tackled him, but he wasn't on the ground not even 2 minutes, because it's on body cam footage. Again, it was shown on the news. They brought him back up, they uncuffed him, they said, hey man, sorry, you know why we did it, right? Well, he took a huge big offense. He was saying that's because I'm black. I promise you that was not because he was black. It's because he was running and there was a gunshot. Remember, police weren't there before. They didn't know what was happening. They were just trying to get people who thought might be involved. The minute they figure out he wasn't, which again, took only a couple minutes, they let him go, they apologized. It is what it is. I promise you, if it was me running right after the gunshot, probably would happen to me as well. They would tackle me, and that's what would happen, and then they would figure out I had nothing to do with it and let me go with apology. And then, even small, those are bigger examples. I'll give you a small example. Just last week, I am driving on Flamingo, doing Uber, taking a passenger on Flamingo Road. So I'm taking the passenger from Flamingo Hotel to Rio. So I had to take Flamingo, and it's rush hour around 5 o'clock. And of course, it's busy on that stretch all the time. But as I'm approaching, I'm realizing that the line to turn onto I-15 South seemed to be unusually long, even for rush hour. And I said it out loud to the passenger, to the guy. I said, oh, wow, that looks unusually long. I wonder what's happening. Like, that's really busy. Well, as I'm getting closer, I see what happened. Apparently, clearly, the truck was already gone. So some truck that was carrying some plywood or drywall, it was kind of hard telling, but it was something of that nature. I think it was drywall mixed with plywood. He dropped some of his load, and of course he didn't stick around. He kept on going, and he's long gone now. But now this whole one lane, there's only 2 lanes to turn in. One lane has all this rubbish in there, and your car shouldn't be driving over it because you're risking your tires. Highway patrol was already there. The officer was already there. So not only he blocked the lane so the cars do not go through that, he was actually out of his cruiser, trying with his hands, trying to pull it all aside to that little ditch thing in there, so he can clear the traffic, because I'm sure he knew that people are backed up and he wanted to get the traffic moving. Now, I'm telling you, he did not have to do this. Because, of course, he already radioed NDOT truck. It's not his job. He could have sat in his air-conditioned cruiser and just wait for NDOT van to come and clean it up and then just make sure everything is hunky-dory and leave. But he was doing it because he just genuinely wanted to help. I'm sure he didn't even give it a second thought. He's like, oh, but that's our police. That's our highway patrol. That's the people who try to protect us. I know this video ended up being a bit long, but it's just food for thought. Mind, I always say that, and I mean it. My opinion, not a gospel truth. I'm not saying this is the only one, and there are plenty of opinions out there, and people will disagree with me. But this is how I see things. That's just me. Everybody stay safe, and remember, treat these people who protect you with some respect. Give them at least some respect. Okay? Take care, everybody.